Imagine, if you will, the year 1995. Arcades buzz with the sounds of Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter II. Kids huddle around Super Nintendos blowing into cartridges. This was a golden age for gaming, a time of pixelated sprites and synthesized soundtracks. Now picture this, amidst the fighting games and platformers, a new contender emerges, a game unlike any other. This is the story of Autism Karens versus Autism Chihuahuas, a game that never was, but in an alternate timeline could have been a cult classic. This wasn't your typical beat-em-up or side-scroller. Autism Karens versus Autism Chihuahuas was a genre-bending experience, a strange brew of puzzle-solving, platforming, and strangely enough, social commentary. The game, had it been released, would have dropped players into a world on the brink of chaos, where the fabric of reality was tearing at the seams. The game's premise was as bizarre as its title. Players could choose their side. The Autism Karens, armed with their piercing voices and a seemingly endless supply of complaints, or the Autism Chihuahuas, small but mighty canines with a penchant for chaos and an uncanny ability to teleport. Each side had its own unique abilities and gameplay mechanics. The Autism Karens, for example, could unleash a screeching tantrum attack, stunning enemies with their sheer volume. They could also summon a manager character who could instantly banish enemies from the screen, though with a limited number of uses. The Autism Chihuahuas, on the other hand, relied on their agility and unpredictability. They could zip around the screen at lightning speed, leaving a trail of chaos in their wake. Their signature move, the Barknado, was a whirling vortex of sound and fury. It's impossible to say what kind of impact Autism Karens versus Autism Chihuahuas would have had on the gaming landscape of 1995, let alone on society at large. The game's satirical take on social issues, its over-the-top characters, and its sheer absurdity would have undoubtedly sparked controversy. Would it have been lauded for its boldness or denounced for its insensitivity? This was a time long before the internet and social media amplified every opinion and controversy. It's likely that the game, had it existed, would have caused a stir in playgrounds and arcades, generating heated debates and more than a few raised eyebrows. Whether it would have been remembered as a cult classic or a tasteless flop is a question lost to the annals of gaming history. Section 4. Stuck in the cartridge technology of 1995. 1995 was a time of technological limitations, especially in the realm of video games. Cartridges had limited storage capacity, graphics were pixelated, and soundtracks were synthesized ditties. Autism Karens versus Autism Chihuahuas would have had to work within these constraints, and yet it's not hard to imagine how the game's developers could have used these limitations to their advantage. The pixelated art style, while crude by today's standards, would have lent itself perfectly to the game's exaggerated characters and over-the-top animations. The limited sound capabilities could have been used to create a chiptune soundtrack that was both catchy and chaotic, perfectly capturing the game's frenetic energy. Section 5. A niche of its own, comparing to 95 classics in the realm of 1995 gaming. Autism Karens versus Autism Chihuahuas would have been an outlier. It wouldn't have fit neatly into any existing genre. It wouldn't have been a Donkey Kong Country or a Super Mario World, nor would it have been a Mortal Kombat or a Street Fighter II. It would have been something altogether different, a strange and wonderful anomaly in a sea of familiar faces. And yet, that's precisely what could have made it special. In a year dominated by platformers, fighting games, and RPGs, Autism Karens versus Autism Chihuahuas could have carved out its own niche. It could have been the game that dared to be different, the one that pushed boundaries and challenged conventions. It might have been too strange, too controversial, or simply too ahead of its time to achieve mainstream success. But for a certain segment of gamers, those who crave something different, something unique, Autism Karens versus Autism Chihuahuas could have been a cult classic in the making.